What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Path of the Network Marketer. It is day 38, episode 38. We're going to continue the conversation on podcasting. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm actually going to give you a step-by-step guide. So this is going to be a three-part series. Today is part one in the three-part series. And here's the thing: if it like I've kind of synthesized everything that I've learned in the past year about podcasting, because I've been podcasting for just a little bit over a year. My 1 year anniversary and my first show was September 1st. I started that. Yeah, I can't believe it. Path of the Jedi launched September 1st, 2021. And so I'm just a little bit over a year into that. And with this particular show, Path of the Network Marketer, I'm just, a hair over a month, right? So we started September 1st of this year. So like all the things I wanted to kind of synthesize and give you guys, synthesize, simplify, like strip it down to its barest essentials, and then share it with you guys so that you can, if you choose to, get your own show off the ground in as little as 3 days. By the end of this third episode, especially if you follow along with the show, and you do these steps as we go, by the end of the third episode, you should be able to launch and get your show off the ground. I wanted to simplify it also because for me, one of the things that kind of held me back, even though I had already really, in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted a podcast, and I knew that this was a space that I wanted to get into because, I heard, that people were doing a lot of really cool things in this space. And I already talked about yesterday all the other reasons why I've fallen in love with podcasting. But again, I was dragging my feet because I was intimidated by the process. It was so foreign to me. I didn't know anything about podcasting other than what it was, basically, when I got into it. The fact that I was really completely going into something absolutely foreign to me was one of the reasons why I dragged my feet. And so I want to make that process simpler for you, and also to let you know that it's not really as complicated as you might think. For me, one of the things, there was a lot of factors why I was dragging my feet. Production value, gear. The technology side was really the most difficult for me because I don't keep up with tech and IT, right? Especially like software and what's happening out there in the space. I don't know anything about RSS feeds and things like that, right? Like I have no idea what any of that means. So like it had become so complicated in my head before I even took that first step. And so that's what I want to alleviate for you and just really, really, really make it as simple as possible so that you can take steps 1, day 1, steps 2, day 2, steps 3, day 3, and then get your show launched and off the ground. So one of the most important things too, also with simplification, is really for me, I want to make this process as simple as possible, getting started, number one, but also number two, the simpler the process is, the simpler we can make it for you, the easier also it will be for you to maintain. Right? Like if we're spending so much time on production value and all the bells and whistles, and I mean, you notice we don't even have a theme song yet, right? We don't even have intro music or outro music yet on this show. And it's because I wanted to get this thing off the ground quickly, because getting it off the ground is really the most important thing, so that you can pay more attention to the most important things. Getting it off the ground, finding your voice, as we say in this profession, in podcasting, right? Really getting used to being on the show and speaking and getting into that groove. And then number 3, consistency in the long term, right? If there are way too many kind of barriers to any of those 3, it's going to be pointless for you to get started with a podcast, because you have to be able to get it on its feet as quickly as possible. You have to be able to find your voice and get into a groove as soon as possible, and you have to maintain that in the long term consistently, right? So that's really the formula to success. So step number one is, before you even start recording, before you even start looking at gear and hosting platforms and things like that, step number 1, get yourself a pen and paper, old school style, and make a list of at least 25 show topics. 25 unique individual show topics. And here's why this is important. I got this from Pat Flynn, and he's one of those resources that I really appreciate that it was out there, because it was one of the most simplest, one of the simplest, that's proper English, one of the simplest how-tos in podcasting that I'd ever seen out there. And he said this, he recommended this because here's the thing, again, it's all about consistency and it's all about long-term. And if you don't have at least 25 unique topics and shows planned out before, you could be dead in the water before you even start, right? Like if you get to like week 4 or episode 4 and you got nothing after that, then again, it's a whole waste of time in the first place. We've talked about the consistency, and the whole point in this thing is to be here in the long term consistently. Minimum 25 to get you started. I mean, if you can do 50, if you can write down 50 unique different show topics, that puts you at almost a year if you're doing one episode a week. If you're doing 2 episodes a week, then 25 episodes will get you to 3 months bare minimum. What you want to aim for your show is long term. And actually, really, the benchmark that I've read pretty much across the board is if you can consistently keep your show up for 2 years, that's when momentum will really start to hit for the show. Not to say that that's when that it's going to take that long for you to see any results. It is a gradual process, but from what I've heard and from what I've read, is that the people that have been able to stick it out consistently for 2 years, they see pretty significant hockey stick growth after that. So be willing to do that. And the first step to really launching that is having enough episode topics to choose from and to pick from when you get started, right? If you're starting with 5, again, that's a really risky place to start, and all the work that you're putting into getting started in the first place will be all for nothing if you can't keep going after 5. So make sure you sit down and really think it out. Can you create a show list of 25 or more and just write those out? And when you go to 50 if you can, but minimum 25, that'll be a good place for you to start. Don't do anything else. Don't do anything else until you have this list. This is really the most important step. And then, of course, for those of you who are even more daring, for the most daring people, and that really just want to throw themselves out there, try to do what I'm doing right now. I'm not at it yet. I'm only on day 38, but I am going for 100 episodes in 100 days. What was it? It was Russell Brunson that said that. I got that from Russell Brunson. He said, if you record and release a podcast episode every day for 100 days, you'll never have to worry about money again. So I'm testing that out. I'm on day 38. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's the first episode in this series, guys. If you're really interested in podcasting, the first step is make a list of 25 episode topics at the very minimum, bare minimum 25. And then we'll go from there. We'll continue this topic on tomorrow with part 2 on how to start your own podcast. So until then, guys, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.